In the late 11th century, the powerful Seljuk Empire ruled the Islamic world from Persia. Sultan Malik Shah and his vizier Nizam al-Mulk reigned over this great empire with careful governance, and at the time they were facing a growing threat. In northern Persia lived a sect called the Nizari Ismailis, followers of a religion combining mysticism with the Quran. They were led by a charismatic leader called Hasan-i-Sabah, who had recruited thousands of converts and whom his influence was growing by the day. He had one goal: to carve out a state for his sect in the northern region, allowing it to survive and thrive within the Islamic Empire. As a result, his men infiltrated and seized key castles in the area. This was a growing concern for Nizam al-Mulk, as he realized this sect was dangerous and ultimately convinced the Sultan to send armies to eradicate them. But he never succeeded in doing so. The castles were strongly defended, and the countryside around them teemed with sympathizers. The war turned into a stalemate, and eventually the Sultan's armies were forced to come home. In spite of all of this, the Ismailis could not hope for more. Given their relatively small numbers and the powers arrayed against them, they had to find a credible way to solidify their power in the north. Subsequently, Hasan-i-Sabah devised a terrifying strategy. In the Islamic world, a leader who had won the respect of many possessed considerable authority, and to the extent that he had that authority, his death could sow chaos and weaken the government from within. After that, things took a terrifying turn. A few months later, as Nizam al-Mulk was traveling in the country, a man dressed as a Sufi monk approached him, pulled out a dagger from under his clothes, and stabbed him to death. The killer was then captured and revealed to be an assassin acting on Hassan's orders. This wasn't just revenge. It was the beginning of history's first organized terrorist campaign for political power. Over the next few years, key members of the administration were assassinated in the same ritualistic fashion. A killer would emerge from a crowd to deliver a deadly blow with a dagger. This was most often done in public and in broad daylight. Sometimes, though, the assassins would infiltrate household staff and kill the victims in their own beds. However, it wasn't the killing itself that most terrified leaders of men. The murders were random, and it was impossible to know who the next victim would be. And that's what struck fear into the hearts of so many. The assassin's strategy was to keep men always on edge. No one could see any pattern in their choice of victim, and the possibility of being the next one was more disturbing than many could bear. This caused a wave of fear fanning out across the empire. Now, viziers, judges, and local officials had to travel surrounded by bodyguards. Many of them began to wear thick, uncomfortable shirts of mail. In certain cities, no one could move from house to house without a permit, which spread disaffection among the citizenry and made it easier for the Ismailis to recruit converts. Many found it hard to sleep at night or to trust their closest friends. Paranoia festered, and all kinds of wild rumors began spreading. Bitter divisions sprang up within the government, as some argued for a hardline approach towards their leader, while others suggested that he should be courted instead. Meanwhile, as the empire struggled to repress the Ismailis, the killings went on, but they were highly sporadic. Months would pass without one, and then suddenly there would be two within a week. There was no reason or pattern to when it happened, or which leader was singled out. Anyone could be killed next at any time, and that exacerbated the fear even more. It also didn't help that when the assassins were arrested, they would accuse different members of the Sultan's inner circle of being either paid spies or secret converts. No one could know to a certainty if they were telling the truth, which cast suspicion on everyone and created the illusion that they were everywhere. As for the assassins themselves, they were patient, disciplined, and fanatical. For example, after murdering their victim in public, they never tried to escape. They were caught, tortured, and executed to a man, but nothing seemed to stop them from achieving their task. They seemed like men possessed, as if they were drugged somehow, which coined them the name Hashashin, from the Arabic word hashish. European crusaders to the Holy Land heard stories about these devilish men, and later named them the Assassins. So what could the Sultan do about this nightmare? Officers would talk endlessly about intercepting the assassins' next moves, but these discussions were to no avail. Without their realizing it, this little sect in northern Persia had come to dominate their thoughts. Years later, the new Sultan, Ahmed Sanjar, decided to put an end to the Ismailis once and for all. He was planning a military invasion to capture their castles with overwhelming force and surround them in the region with blockades. As preparations for the war got underway, Hasan-i-Sabah sent messages to Sanjar offering to negotiate an end to the killings. The Sultan declined the offer of peace and took extra precautions to prevent any attempt on his life. He changed his sleeping patterns and allowed only trusted advisors to approach him. He thought himself personally secure by doing this, and believed he could break free from the panic surrounding him. But what happened next would dispel that notion right away. One morning, as the Sultan awoke in his bed, he found a dagger plunged into the ground near his person. How did it get there? What did it mean? No one had a clue. However, later that evening, a message arrived from Hasan himself, saying, "Did I not wish the Sultan well? That dagger, which was struck into the hard ground, would have been planted in his soft breast." This act alone was enough to push the Sultan over the edge. He couldn't live in constant fear, wondering who might murder him in his sleep. His mind was ravaged by fear and poisoned by paranoia. Until one day, he had had enough. He subsequently called off his campaign and made peace with Hasan right away. Who would have thought just a handful of assassins could bring an empire to its knees? The story of the assassins teaches us a valuable lesson. A lesson on the power of fear. This power could not come by merely making people afraid. It was the effects of it that followed which were ultimately most damaging to the Seljuk Empire. Paranoia, restlessness, and sheer panic spread across the region in a ripple effect. And all it took were a few well-timed attacks that sparked chaos and uncertainties up and down the chain of command. Understand this. Fear is the most infectious condition. We are all extremely susceptible to it, and it's often hard for us to perceive how deeply we are affected by it from those around us. And that is what makes fear so effective and so dangerous. A group caught by this kind of terror cannot find its balance and can fall with even the slightest push. The weakest members of it will succumb to the greatest fear, spreading rumors and anxieties that are contagious to the rest. Even the strongest and most determined will be infected in the end, as Sultan Sanjar was with his harsh attempts at security, which revealed that he was under the influence of this fear. Just one simple dagger in the ground was enough to push him over the edge. Nevertheless, in normal circumstances, individuals who are afraid in some way can often regain their mental balance over time, especially when they are around others who are calm and rational. Therefore, the final questions remain: how can we face fear and overcome it? Is it possible to achieve a state of fearlessness? This is exactly what we'll be covering in the next video, so make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to not miss it. And if you found today's historical video insightful, give it a like and share it with your network. You would be really helping the channel. Stay strong, stay wise, and see you in the next video.